Okay, so our next speaker is going to be Marty Howell, the Chief Sustainability Officer of the City of El Paso. He's been with El Paso for 5 years, leading the creation and implementation of the city's nationally recognized sustainability program. He created El Paso Green Business Challenge, helping over 40 local businesses become more efficient and competitive. He also co-chaired the Local Clean Energy Initiative, a regional collaborative to leverage clean energy resources to foster economic development. Marty started his career on Navy nuclear submarines, earned a degree in environmental engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, worked as a private environmental consultant, and has been a small city engineer for the city of Evans in Colorado, as a water resources operation manager for a mid-sized city, Greeley, Colorado, and he's a registered professional engineer with the state of Colorado, and we're really grateful that he made the trip from the border of Texas. Marty, come on. Did I get the wrong one?
All right, so thanks for having El Paso here in San Antonio at your conference. As you may have noticed from the introduction, I am not a native Texan. I am a Californian by way of Colorado. However, I really have some thanks to give you. My wife is a native of Green Bay, and therefore I am a Packer fan for the last 22 years. So I really appreciate the gift that Dallas gave us this Sunday. You know, Tony Romo and the Dallas defense, the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you very much. I am. I'm going to sneak out here before the next speaker so you can't tackle me on the way out. I actually carried my Green Bay Cup through the Dallas airport yesterday, and I got some looks, but I didn't get anyone actually chasing me down. All right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what El Paso's been doing related to sustainability. And when you think about it, at its core, the way to become more sustainable is to address energy and air quality. So it is fitting that we're talking about this here. And I'm going to figure out how to do the technology. I'm going to tell you some of our challenges and then some of our strategies. And really, when it comes to a high-level perspective of what El Paso. Wow, I need some more coffee. All right, so our problems are that we have to address poverty, we've got to deal with air quality, and we've got to deal with sprawl. Those are the big picture items that we face. When you look at poverty, obviously all big cities have that as an issue. El Paso, it's one that's especially a problem. If you look at the poorest zip codes in the U.S., according to the IRS, the poorest zip code in the U.S. is in downtown El Paso. And 4 of the poorest zip codes in the U.S. are near downtown El Paso. So when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about energy, it's something that we have to figure out in a context that deals with people who are in extreme and concentrated poverty. Air quality is an issue. It wasn't always that way. I looked up back in the turn of the century, El Paso the Chamber of Commerce used to advertise to try and get folks to come there who had tuberculosis. So you could read things like the fine scenery and salubrious air. I had to check that out. I wasn't sure if that's something I could say in public, but apparently it means it's okay to breathe. But you know, the advertisement said things like the climate of El Paso is the finest in the Union, and the dry, refined air of the region is a luxury to breathe. But I didn't have to look long to find pictures like this today, and that's no longer the case. And not too long ago, we were out of attainment for 3 of the qualities of air that the EPA measures, and air quality is a big issue. It impacts our economy, and we have intense problems with childhood asthma, specifically along the border, that we need to address. And a lot of that is related to the way that we've developed. I know that oftentimes some people don't like this word sprawl, but it is a fact of life in how El Paso has grown. I like the second definition in there. It talks about sprawl as the awkward spreading out of limbs of either man or community. The first is a product of bad manners, the second of bad planning. And I don't know if any of you are planners. Sorry, I'm an engineer, so I can say that. And this is a common street in El Paso. Nicole sitting there knows right where it is. And frankly, if you worked at the Lowe's on the left-hand side and you wanted to go to lunch on the right-hand side, I bet you'd drive just to go to lunch across the street. And that is all too common in El Paso. We have developed in a way that driving is the only logical way to get around town. And this is a picture of the border crossings. We have drayage fleets also in El Paso, and they move things back and forth from maquilas. And there is immense congestion. We don't have Houston congestion throughout town, but we have Houston and Dallas congestion at the borders. And people wait for hours going either way across the borders, which exacerbates those air quality issues at the border. So, it wasn't always that way. This is a picture of the El Paso Electric Streetcar Network, which is the backbone of our community. And those neighborhoods that grew up around this streetcar network are the most desirable neighborhoods in our city. They have the highest value per square foot. It's hard to find a home in these neighborhoods, but it's not that way anymore. This is more what like El Paso looks now. Much like Phoenix and Dallas and many other places, we have sprawled out for miles and miles in the desert. And this is no typical El Paso street. And frankly, I like to ride my bike, but I would not ride my bike on that street because I think I would die. And I wouldn't send my kids even for a block down that street to run an errand because it's not a safe place to walk. It is a safe place to, well, I don't know about that, El Paso drivers. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. That has impacts. This picture is a picture of the increasing obesity levels in the nation and specifically in Texas, and just take red as not good. So we're getting fatter. And Men's Health magazine calls out the fattest cities in the U.S., and unfortunately, this is one of those lists we didn't want to be at the top of, but we are. El Paso is ranked as the third fattest city. I take comfort that Dallas is right there with us, and you look, San Antonio's not too far behind us. But then I look way at the bottom, and a city like Cleveland is 77th. And frankly, I can't really picture how Cleveland can be better than us in anything, but apparently they are. So, the impacts of the way we've developed means that nearly 3 out of 10 children in El Paso are overweight. El Paso's tied for the most inactive city in the nation. We're one of the least walkable locales, and 65% of our residents are obese or overweight. And that's not because of their heritage, not because they're Texan or Mexican. It's because of the way we've grown. There's other problems with the way we've grown, having to do with the cost of housing and affordability. And this is an illustration of that. The Center for Neighborhood Technology in Chicago is trying to put out a new way to think about how affordable homes are. And here's an illustration of that. In El Paso, if you look at just the cost of a house, 82% of the homes in El Paso are affordable by the common metric. But if you add in the cost to get to that house and back and forth from the house to work, only 11% of those homes are affordable. So what we're doing is we're taking the affordable homes, taking the low-income folks and saying, you drive 45 minutes to the edge of town, to the affordable area, and then we're bankrupting them. And here's some specific examples. This is a neighborhood that's more dense, more compact, and more connected in El Paso. And if you look at the numbers that are circled there, I think you can see them. These are census tracts, and there's folks in those neighborhoods that when you add up the cost to drive and to buy their home, they're spending about 53 to 50%, 56% of their income on housing and transportation. So if you go to the fringe, this is way out in the affordable neighborhoods, the newer homes that are for moderate to low-income folks or maybe medium levels, those folks are spending 71, 76, 79% of their income on their house and their car. And that's before they've bought groceries, before they've paid for health care, before they've done any of those other things. And frankly, that's broken. So we're trying to change that, and we're trying to become more sustainable. Frankly, we talked about switching to these guys for our fleet. But I hear the emissions are pretty bad, so we may not do that. We're lucky in that 9 years ago we switched to government styles. We went to a city manager style, and we have longer terms for our mayor. And we've had, at least until recently, a period of tranquility from our policymakers. Nicole laughs. And some of the strategies that they set 9 years ago is they said that El Paso wanted to be the premier community of the Southwest, and that we wanted to create a more vibrant, harmonious, and I love the word that's in my job title, sustainable city by building on existing strengths. And the big one, they said they wanted to be the least car-dependent city in the Southwest, and that is a lofty goal. Some of the goals that we set in our sustainability plan that we created in 2009 were that we wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we wanted to reduce our energy use by 30%, again, be less car dependent, have a really efficient fleet, and do a bunch of stuff in energy. So I'm going to show you some of those things. Project-wise, in 2007, we rolled out Curbside Recycling. Same year, the folks from the local Green Building Council pushed us and we adopted a LEED Silver ordinance. We've done landfill and wastewater biogas recovery systems. Through no help of our own, over half the homes in El Paso now are built to Energy Star. We've done a fair amount of retrofits, a lot of CNG vehicles. I'll tell you in a minute about energy competitions that we've done internally that are good stuff as well. But I wanted to focus mostly on that development pattern again. 2 years ago, we finished a comprehensive planning process. And for those of you who don't know what a comp plan is, it's basically the Bible or the bedrock to how a community says they're going to grow. And it's the document that you refer back to for the next 5, 10, or 15 years to say what's okay and what's not, and what are the guiding principles. So we finished that up a year before last and got some good press from that. And basically folks said that our efforts resulted in what they called the best smart growth comp plan. And I know there are folks that think smart growth is an evil word. I think it's smart, and I'll tell you why. An example is looking at that street I told you about before. This is Mesa Street. It's a street that I drive on a lot, and frankly, I wouldn't walk and I wouldn't ride my bike on it. But we are under construction right now to build a bus rapid transit corridor along that street from near my house to downtown. And our hope is that by doing this on this corridor and other corridors throughout the city, that we can change the context of that corridor and hopefully development in general. So our thought is with a little bit of, well, more than a little bit, of public investments, we can change from a street that looked like the original one to one like this with public investment. And hopefully, we can change the character of that street with private investment that follows public. We would be foolish just to throw public money at it. And change to a street like this, one that I would send my kids on a walk for and that I would walk on, and that there would be a lot more economic value from that property on the right than just a parking lot. So that's our hope, is to transform a lot of streets from ones that look like this to ones that look like this. And it is a hope, and we are putting our money in, and we hope that private money follows. So pray for us. I'll tell you a little bit about some building stuff we're working on. The one that I'm most proud of is what's called the Paisano Green Community. This project was finished by our housing authority, and it is a 73 unit. Is that another picture? Sorry. There's an actual picture of the completed project with the sexy wind turbines on the back and the solar panels on the top. This is a 73 units low-income housing for seniors, and it was built to LEED Platinum and Enterprise Green Communities. And it's really a champion or a showcase of design. So instead of taking the design for a project in Boulder or Berkeley or Boston and planning it into El Paso, the architects and design team for this project looked at this specific site in these specific residences and designed a great project for this site. They responded to the conditions that were there. They made it so that there's only one window in the whole site that gets afternoon sun in the summer. And they put a huge wall up on the west side to keep the afternoon west sun off those west walls. They tell me that in El Paso in the late afternoon in the summer, you get more heat gain from an exposed wall than you would from an exposed window on the south. So that's why they put this wall up. But they were responding to the local conditions. They also, this is very near one of those congested border crossings, so they did a lot of work in trying to improve the indoor air quality and doing some filtration and then passing air over heat recovery units. And here's the results. If they had built the project to normal code, the projections were that the energy cost would have been $625 per unit. Just through the great design that they did, they were able to reduce the energy costs down to $317 a unit. And by adding the solar on top and the wind turbines on the front that never turn, because it doesn't blow in El Paso when you need it to, they reduced the energy costs to $8 a year. Did you hear that? $8 a year. Isn't that cool? All right. So we've done a fair amount of retrofits. This one is one that was funded by my friend Dub. It's a solar hot water system on one of our indoor pools. And I just had to throw this up because solar panels are sexy. It was also paid for by my friend Dub. I wanted to talk a little bit about behavior. We probably went backwards in that we've done a fair amount of retrofits and we've done some renewable energy. And just last summer, we started trying to address the human element, at least from a city perspective. And we started what we called the Green Business Challenge, which we stole from our friends in Houston, and the Energy Savings Challenge, which I stole from someone else. But what we did was we had our local libraries compete against each other. And we asked them to write a one-page plan saying, how will you save energy this summer? And that was last summer. And the winners, we gave them a pizza party. And then what we did was we showed them how much their energy use was the previous year, and we had them all try and reduce their energy use compared to themselves from the prior year. And in the first month, the library that reduced their energy use the most, we gave them pizza. And then the second month, guess what? We gave them pizza. And the lesson learned here is that pizza saves energy. So if you have any takeaways, that's the one. What we saw over 6 months last summer was that 12 libraries reduced their use by 19%. They saved over $20,000 in electricity. The library that saved the most energy reduced their use by over 30%. And this was not by changing light bulbs, it was by changing policies and behaviors and changing thermostats, computer settings, not using rooms that didn't need to be used. And the cool part is these libraries were all open one more day and longer hours. And 5 of those libraries switched their refrigeration systems from swamp coolers, which makes sense in Texas, or not in Texas, in El Paso, to refrigerated air. So they had more intensive energy systems, and they were open longer, and they saved 19% in their energy use. And even cooler is we went back this summer without telling them. This summer we did a fire station energy challenge, and we had all 30-some of our fire stations compete against each other, which we thought they would be real competitive and kind of eat their young to win. But they saved something like 7 or 8%. There was some malcontents there. But anyways, we snuck back and looked at the libraries. And those libraries that saved 19% last summer continued that behavior. And this summer they reduced their use another 3.5%. So behavior is a great story. And we look forward to sneaking back and looking what our fire guys do. Next year we're going to have the police guys compete against each other. We have big plans. Right now our city council is talking about whether to fund a bike share system. My hope is that we have a big Rockin' Earth Day event with a bunch of hippies downtown here soon. Pace in a box, I have big hopes for. I talk to commercial people all the time that their first question is, how can I afford this? And how can I let this project compete with the other things that are trying to take my limited capital? And I'm probably putting too many eggs in this basket, but I really do have big hopes. I have dreams of adopting a building performance reporting ordinance in El Paso, and we'd like to switch all our fleet to CNG and do a little bit of composting. And with that, I think I'm done, except I do have to show you this, one of my favorite slides.